And a very warm welcome back to the Wizards of the Street. We are in conversation with Laura Geritz, CEO and co-CIO, Rondure Global Investors. Laura, can you give me an example of historically, which stock are you very proud that you picked in India and you got it right? What attracted you to that stock?
Well, I found that if I stick to my knitting of buying good companies when they go out of favor, you do very well. Of course, I'm at a new firm today, but I was invested in India decades ago. So we bought, Asian Paints when it was a small cap company. So I look back at that, and when I started my new firm, I bought it again, and pretty much reassembled the same portfolio I had, and I've just held on. So, I would point to that as one of my best buys, though. Buying that as a small cap company and just holding on.
It's been a great stock. It's still a compounder. But, I have to ask you this because I know you're from Kansas. And in The Wizard of Oz, there's a very famous dialogue that says, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. When you go to emerging markets, do you get the same sense of feeling? And why do you persist with emerging markets when you're one jet, 30 minutes away from Silicon Valley?
Well, it's because I grew up in Kansas, that I always, when you're in Kansas, you pick up a book, you imagine places all over the world. My parents, passed their passion for the world and their imagination and creativity on to me. So I think it was because I was in Kansas, and I was literally in tornado country in Kansas, that, I wanted to see the world.
And you started in Japan?
I've been to Europe before, but I had started, by teaching English in Japan, studying the Japanese language.
That was quite an interesting experience for a fund manager. How did that experience shape you? I mean, did it help you? Did it give you some better insights that you normally would not have had, you thought?
I think, I'm sensitive to cultures. I mean, the nuances of language are really important. I don't know if in Japan, but, probably, I will try means no, probably means no, maybe means no, yes can mean no, and no definitely means no. So, I mean, there's the nuances of language and culture matter in investing.
And that's the nuances that you use. But something that's not nuanced right now is, the Fed has been raising rates. It has been raising rates since March. How long does it, generally, whenever the Fed raises rates, there's a disaster waiting to happen. Mexico, Brady bonds, Caribbean. We've seen some early signs of that in surprising places. How long does it take to work its way through the economy, these rising rates? And how scared are you of that?
12 to 18 months, generally how long it takes to work through the economy. I mean, this has been a different cycle because of COVID, lockdowns and reopening and monetary and fiscal stimulus. I feel like you have different cycles all over the world. And you've had, the cycle has been more like a tsunami than a wave this time. So I think people still don't understand that demand actually needs to be destroyed to bring inflation down in the United States. So it's going to be a tough year for earnings in the world's biggest economy next year, I think.
So what is your current mantra? You say buy the dips, or you say sell the risk on rally?
We're until the mentality of buy the dip dies, we are still selling the rally. We're still saying, with a portfolio that's more heavily tilted to consumer staples and less cyclical businesses. But I mean, because of COVID, it's really, it's really a great time frame to actually be looking at companies as opposed to just one cycle globally. It's many cycles going on all over the world.
Laura, what is the cycle in India that you're looking at now? You look out 2-3 years down the road. What is it about this market that excites you, or which sectors excite you? Can you give us some color on that?
It was the only country in the world where there were expensive stocks where we didn't sell or take profit. And the reason is because I really believe this time around, that the tides are shifting. You're getting, movement of more business to India. You have the country investing in infrastructure and development. And so I'm really optimistic about the long-term prospects for India. So it was one of the few places where I said, if you look at surface level PEs or multiples in the country, I'm willing to hang on because I think the prospects are so good 3, 5, and 10 years from now.
So basically you sat through the pandemic fall and rode the rise again?
Bought more too. So
that's pretty gutsy.
well, I mean, just you have phenomenally good companies. I don't know if you remember, but when everyone was in a panic, I think it was during the second lockdown, we actually held tight and said, maybe this will be finally an opportunity to increase our stakes. So we like to do what others aren't doing.
It's easier said, it's tougher to do. I know that from practical experience. You've also said that bull markets only teach bad lessons. What do you mean by that?
Well, I stole that from another great investor, Howard Marks. We've been in a narrative environment for the last few years where people haven't been looking at the actual fundamentals of the companies. They've just been buying stories. I think it's one of the this last few years, I think has been one of the biggest bubbles in markets I've seen in my history anyway. So it doesn't teach you to roll up your sleeves and actually look at how good the businesses are. And I think people are being forced to do that now. So it teaches you that making money is easy when it's not.
Are you still afraid that the Fed will keep raising rates, or will they blink at some point?
I think they can. Last week's speech by Jerome Powell was his best. I mean, he finally took inflation seriously and let the markets know that he took inflation seriously. I mean, the economy here again, you have certain sectors of the economy here cooling, like the tech sector, which in my book was so overheated. I mean, it had 12 years of free money, so it was just incredibly overheated. That's not necessarily fully recessionary. What is hot here is the services economy. It is hot, and that has to give. We're seeing incredible food price inflation here. So he's got to take this seriously. He's got to break it, or it's going to be worse in the long run.
Yeah, it's like what Paul Volcker did, perhaps. Take the medicine, set the economy right. But that's too serious. What we do, Laura, in the show is we do a rapid fire round to try and get a snapshot of my guest. And I think you'll be a perfect candidate for that because there's so much varied interest. So I'm going to ask you questions. First thing that comes to your mind, shoot out, right? John Templeton or Jim Rogers, better for emerging markets?
Templeton style Rogers books. Rogers books are phenomenal.
An emerging market leader that gets it?
I think, I'll go country, Vietnam. The North Asian model for development is phenomenal.
Is it following the East Asian model of the 60s and 70s?
It is following the East Asian model, low-cost manufacturing, high priority based on education, and then go up the value chain.
Lovely. Would you rather buy semiconductor stocks or oil stocks for a period of 3 years?
Oh, this is a tough one. I mean, I think semiconductors, but I don't think we're done yet with the earnings coming down.
Okay. A Republican or Democratic, who would make a better president for the markets in 2024?
Normal Republican, normally, but, with inflation, I don't know if tax cuts are going to be what the market wants to hear.
Okay. The best country so you visited 75 countries. Which is the best country to visit as a tourist?
This one's hard. I'll go South Africa.
South Africa.
Lovely country.
Yeah, lovely safaris, lovely landscape. Great. An investment book that is your Bible?
Intelligent Investor.
Benjamin Graham.
Ben Graham. Defensive Investor chapter is still, it covers quality, it covers value. It's a phenomenal book.
Lovely. And an Indian investor that you're familiar with, can you name anyone that you're familiar with?
Munish Pabrai.
Yeah, he's out in Irvine County, I think. He's also very bullish on India at this time.
He's more deep value than me, but I appreciate his style.
Moving on, an Indian CEO whom you met and admired.
You know, it's not. It's more a team, a management team, and it's Mariko. And I've never seen a CFO so passionate about his product.
Harsh Mariwala and his team, right?
Yes,
Lovely.
exactly. Amazing.
A basketball game with the Utah Jazz, which is your local team, or an IPL game, what would you rather watch?
Still, cricket, but the games are long and it's really hot.
The 5-day version is long. The IPL is 3 hours. It's like a basketball game.
It's still long. It's still long, but I would rather see cricket.
Yes, okay. The final question, because I know you're a Japanophile, would you rather go see sakuras or cherry blossoms, climb Mount Fuji, or soak in an onsen, which is a Japanese spa? What would you do if you had a weekend free in Japan?
I've done all three of those things. They're all phenomenal, but I would ride a train in the middle of nowhere. There are some of these trains that no one gets on, and they're just wonderful. So South Island, through snow country. It's a lovely weekend though.
Just out of curiosity, they also have 7-star luxury trains. Have you done them in Japan? I've always thought that'd be good.
You know that, as you know, probably know, the line for those was, you know, the favor went to the local. The favors went to the locals first. So the line to get on one of those was extremely long. It was you know,
and expensive, I'm sure.
Yes.
Laura,
But there are very cheap ones through the center of Kyushu that are just phenomenal, you know?
Yeah. I love the name of your firm, Rondure Advisors. How did you get that name?
It was from a Walt Whitman poem. It's called Passage to India. Oh, vast Rondure swimming in space. It's about the world, you know, and the globe.
And Rondure means really spherical or globe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
you know, I did my homework on you. I know you liked Walt Whitman. And one of his other quotes is, "We convince by our presence." And certainly you've convinced us by your presence on our show today. Thank you so much, Laura, for being part of our show on Wizards.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Wizards of the Street. I'm Ramesh Damani, wishing you a very happy week ahead. Goodbye.